Story 1. Creepypasta stories about rituals were really popular back in the late 2000s and early 2010s. These stories often gave step-by-step instructions on how to perform strange rituals to make contact with the paranormal. While most of these stories were poorly written, they got popular quickly, probably because they were easy to copy. One interesting thing that happened was that people started sharing their experiences of trying these rituals. Most of the time, nothing happened. They would sit in a dark room all night, waiting for a ghost that never showed up. But sometimes people would lie about their experiences, claiming they had made contact with something supernatural. They would show proof like claw marks or make predictions about the future that never came true. Everyone knew these stories were fake, but they were still fun to read. There was one particular ritual creepypasta that stood out to me. It was called Drive to Find or something like that. It got popular on the /X board for a few weeks, then disappeared. This story was different because it had multiple posts, images and diagrams showing how to do the ritual. The original poster, OP, answered questions and clarified confusing parts, but vanished once the thread died. People copied the original thread, including the pictures and clarifications, which made it even more popular. This led to people trying the ritual themselves. Unlike most ritual stories, the people who posted about their experiences with Drive to Find all claimed they had tapped into something extraordinary. They were filled with awe and fear, which made their stories stand out. It caught my interest. It was winter in 2009, and my friend Jack had just gotten his driver's license. He had his dad's old beat-up Camry and was eager to use his new freedom. We were chatting on Steam, trying to figure out what to do in our small town in South Carolina on a Friday night. Jack suggested driving around and maybe seeing if we could buy beer from a gas station. Jack looked a bit older than 16, but he would definitely get carded. I was a year younger and more of a rule follower, so the idea made me uneasy. I brought up my interest in creepypasta stories. Why don't we try the Drive to Find creepypasta? What? It's this new creepypasta I read on /X/A a few days ago. Basically, you do a bunch of stuff, then you start driving around until you find a house that doesn't exist. I'm sure it's BS, but it could be fun. LOL, dude, that sounds dumb as hell. Sounds better than getting arrested for trying to get beer, Imo. I sent him the story over Steam. I wasn't entirely serious, but I wasn't joking either. This story was unique because it required two people. Most ritual creepypastas were written for individuals. I had a folder on my old PC with a bunch of these stories, including Drive to Find. I wish I could find that folder again because there's no evidence that this story ever existed. Here's what I remember from it. First, you had to draw a series of markings on a mirror with charcoal and burn a candle at each marking. This was supposed to weaken the barrier between worlds and allow you to see the between sides. After that, you had to rinse the mirror off into a container and then boil the water until it evaporated, leaving a small amount of ash. You would then smear the ash on your eyelids, giving you the sight. Both people involved in the ritual had to do this. One person would be the lurker, and the other would be the seeker. The lurker's job was to guide the seeker around blindly by any means, like walking or driving, and the seeker's job was to find something. The seeker couldn't guide themselves because they would always feel like they were on the right path. The lurker wouldn't know the path, which made it easier to find the destination. You both had to declare your roles to the clean mirror and say some important sounding words to seal the deal. The seeker would then feel like they were on the brink of finding something. The lurker would guide the seeker randomly, ignoring any intuition or direction from the seeker. The only way to find the correct destination was to do the opposite of what the seeker said. The seeker would never claim to have found the place. The lurker would have to verify it. Once they found the place, they would approach the house, barn, or any building with a door and force the door open. Inside, there would be a black void. They were not supposed to enter the void, no matter what it enticed them with. They could shout a demand into the void, and it would either grant the demand, pull them in, or both. Jack didn't reply for a bit. I thought he might ghost me for the rest of the night, only to return the next day as if nothing had happened. Jack and I had known each other since the 3rd grade. We used to live on the same street until he and his dad moved to Easley. We had started to drift apart over the past few years. I had become a computer nerd and spent most of my time online. Jack was starting his life, planning to apply for jobs in January as his dad insisted. Gaming kept us in touch, and we had played a lot of Team Fortress 2 in 2009. To my surprise, Jack replied, fuck it, why not? We'll do this, and you can't complain if I lurk us straight to a gas station, LOL. Jack's response was casual, which was typical for him. I knew his real plan was to end up at the Stop a Minute, a gas station where there were rumors of an employee who didn't check IDs. After that, we'd probably head back to my place to play Team Fortress 2 or Counter-Strike while a bit tipsy. My mum worked late, and I didn't have a dad, so my house was perfect for some underage drinking. Jack showed up about half an hour later. I had already started getting everything ready. I had a pot on the stove and had grabbed a circular hallway mirror that had been there since before I was born. There was also something with fragrances that I can't remember. Jack brought an orange and some bleach, among other things. We needed to create a strong, unpleasant smell for the ritual. In the kitchen, we set everything up. I began the ritual by reciting lines from the Creepypasta page I had printed out, following the steps carefully. Jack stood there with his arms crossed, looking amused as I went through the process. I felt a bit silly, but also excited. Jack didn't say anything, just smirked. He was a great friend for indulging me in this silly activity. He knew how much I wanted to try one of these rituals at least once. In his mind, the night would end with us playing Team Fortress 2 together while drunk. When it was time to place the candle flames on the tips of the 2 markings, we both had to do it. We grabbed long candles that had been sitting as decorations in dusty candle holders for as long as I could remember. We let them on the stove and burned the tips of the charcoal markings in a specific order. I went first, then Jack. As we did this, I started to feel strange. I felt dizzy, but still aware of my surroundings. Jack felt it too. Sam, I'm not. I feel weird. Yeah, man, me too. It's got to be this bleach stuff. It's burning my eyes. Yeah, you're probably right. The mixture of bleach, fresh oranges, pine sol and other cleaners in a big bowl was extremely strong. Jack had a point. We powered through the rest of the candle burning and snuffed them out. I remember there was something specific we had to do while extinguishing the flame, but I can't recall what it was. After that, I got a bottle of water, poured it on the mirror, and wiped the smudges with my hand. I then poured the black liquid into an already boiling pan of water on the stove. We went to my room to play some games while waiting for the pot to boil away. It didn't take long. The whole process took about 45 minutes. It wasn't even 7 o'clock yet. While we were waiting, Jack got the name of the stop-a-minute attendant known for not checking IDs from a friend. I still felt odd, even after being away from the kitchen for a few minutes. I didn't mention it. Jack said, "Well, beer or not, we don't have to worry about a hangover, because that stuff in the kitchen has already guaranteed a headache. Did you have to make it that strong?" Hey, it said to create a powerful, noxious odor that filled the air and recommended bleach or citrus and garlic. I was just following the instructions. I don't think it's the... A flash shot across my vision. It was thousands of glimpses of buildings along with their smells and sounds all at once. My senses felt overwhelmed for ages, even though it was just a brief moment. Among the many visions, I saw an old, run-down 7-Eleven with strange signs, the smell of burning hair and blood, a burned-down church with intact doors, a derelict brick house with the sound of someone singing "Happy Birthday," and a police station wrapped in tape with red and blue lights flashing. I could go on for days. When I came to, I saw Jack looking at me, pale as a ghost. I said, "Did you just..." "Yeah, I saw..." You know, let's just go check on that pot. The sooner we can pour out that bleach stuff, the better, Jack said nervously. He was still blaming the fumes from the cleaning supplies, but I think we both knew that wasn't the case. We went to the kitchen and found the water completely boiled out of the pot, leaving a small amount of soot at the bottom. I turned off the burner and Jack took the bowl outside and poured it out in the yard. He looked at the bowl, thought for a second, and dropped it beside the mess he had poured on the ground. I can't remember if the instructions said to do that, but I was too freaked out to care. When Jack came back in, I said, "Look, man, this is stupid. We should just clean this up and call it a day." I was scared. I had my glimpse of something paranormal, and that was enough for me. Jack looked at me with intense eyes and said, "No, Sam, we already got this far. Let's just do the eyeliner thing, say what we need to say, and then when nothing happens, we can go get wasted and forget about this." He was completely different from earlier. He was animated and pushy about continuing. "Jack, did you see it too?" "No, I didn't see a goddamn thing, Sam. This is all bullshit. Hurry up and put this stuff on your eyelids and say the thing. I'm the lurker, you're the seeker." "But I don't know. I don't think I want to do this anymore." My head was spinning, and every alarm bell in my body was telling me to run. "Look, I don't know what you saw, but it wasn't anything. The only way you can prove this is all bullshit is by finishing this. When we're done, and we're just standing here like nerds with stuff all over our faces, we can go on and forget any of this ever happened." This went on for a few minutes. I tried to share some of what I saw, the depth of it, but he wouldn't listen. He wouldn't admit he saw anything either. Jack was determined. He threatened to do it alone, make himself the seeker just to prove I was being a coward. The instructions said several times not to do this, but never explained why. At this point, I was enough of a believer to take that as a threat. When he started rubbing the soot on his eyelids, I did the same. "You're a real jerk, dude," I said, as I rubbed my index finger covered in ash over my eyelid, careful not to get any in my eye. "Hey man, I gotta show you that whatever that was, it was bullshit. You'll never live this down," Jack smirked. "Now let's get this over with." We both stared into the small hallway mirror and began saying our separate pledges. Mine was a promise to never stop seeking until it is found. Jack's was a pledge to help the seeker find his way by ignoring his pleas. The room felt extremely serious. My heart was pounding, and none of this felt fun anymore. It felt like I had stumbled into a world I should have stayed far away from. Then we were both done, nothing happened. I stood there for a minute, feeling my face flush with embarrassment. Jack laughed triumphantly and clapped my shoulder. "See, Sam, what did I tell you? I'm gonna wash this stuff off now." Jack approached the sink and I let out a sigh, half relief, half disappointment. "Yeah, man, this whole thing was a waste of time," I laughed. "Got the need to do this out of my system, though." "That's good. Maybe we can do normal stuff next Friday," Jack said, splashing water on his face. "Hey, where do you keep your dish soap?" "Oh, it's..." I trailed off. "Sam?" "The dish soap. Dish soap, dish soap, dish soap." I knew where it was, but I couldn't place it. It was everywhere and nowhere all at once. I felt like I knew exactly where it was, but couldn't say. "It's... I started frantically opening cabinets, looking in the fridge, the oven, throwing utensils and pans on the floor. "I know where it is, Jack. I know exactly where it is. It's... Jack stared at me, unable to hide his terror. "Sam, your eyes. What the heck, dude?" Apparently my pupils were completely dilated. I was drooling and spinning in place, frantic about the dish soap. Jack looked around at all the cabinets I had opened and noticed the only door I left closed was under the sink. He opened the cabinet, and there sat a half-empty bottle of Dawn. As soon as I saw the soap, my thoughts regained composure, and I stood there, slack-jawed. There was a moment of silence, complete disbelief at what had just happened, but the mess around us proved it was real. Jack broke the silence. "Sam, what did we do?" My voice was much shakier than I had thought, a mix of fear and adrenaline. I don't know, man, but I'm starting to feel weird. There's somewhere I gotta be. I gotta go there now. I know exactly where it is, but I don't know. I have no idea what's happening to me, Jack. Jack approached me. I'm feeling weird too, dude. I gotta take you there. I don't think I can do anything else until we get there. He had a very serious, haunted look on his face. What did you see, Jack? Earlier, I mean. What did you see? I saw nothing. Come on, let's go. And with that, within 5 minutes of finishing the ritual, we were off. Nothing else mattered. Neither of us even shut off the sink faucet. It is extremely difficult to convey this feeling I had. I felt so sure of myself and endlessly lost. I wish I knew what Jack was feeling. He had this frantic energy about him that was so unlike how he normally acted. Jack began driving around town through the neighborhoods. I was a pure menace the entire time. I physically could not shut up. I was chattering and shouting and waving my arms, threatening to take the wheel and drive myself. Jack was going the wrong way. I knew for a fact that every turn he made was wrong, and I got angrier each time he made a wrong move. No, you motherfucker. I said right. Turn right at that stoplight. Are you not listening to me? Are you dumb? I need to get there now and you're messing everything up. I was spitting and angry, trying desperately to convince Jack to take my direction. I knew deep down that he was doing exactly what he needed to, yet I couldn't help it. Jack tried a few times to reason with me, but eventually went quiet and drove, ignoring me as I screamed. This went on for a very, very long time. I want to say we were out for 5 or 6 hours, but it had to have been much shorter than that. My mouth was dry, my voice hoarse, but I just kept going. Eventually, I began berating Jack for getting us so lost that our surroundings were unrecognizable. The amount of turns and back roads put us in an area that I knew neither of us had any clue about. You bastard, look at what you've done. We are so lost. We can't even make it back. Jack started slowing down the car to a stop. I saw what caught his eye as well. There was a gravel driveway off from the road, leading to a normal-looking house for this area. It looked old, a little run down, but still livable. It had peeling yellow paint and a tarp covering what I assumed would be a broken window on the porch. The porch appeared to be slightly cluttered. A hanging bulb illuminated the entrance. The oddest thing about this house wasn't what it looked like, it's where it was. It appeared to have been cut into the earth instead of built into it. It's hard to explain. The edges didn't feel right. The shadows coming from the front porch and the moon overhead appeared off as well. Even in my furious state, I couldn't help but notice it. There was a moment of quiet, the only sounds being the wheezing of the engine, which had for sure been run harder than it had in years. Jack asked, "Is this the place, Sam?" "Well, I don't think. No. We have to keep going down this road." With that, Jack slowly pulled into the gravel driveway without another word. I felt anger for a second, but it quickly began to wash away. Whatever fever I had been put under broke as soon as Jack parked the car and turned off the engine. My voice, hoarse from all of the screaming I had done, my throat dry as a bone, choked out, "Dude, I am so sorry. I have no idea what that was." "It's fine. All part of this game, right?" Jack's eyes were dark. He seemed incredibly serious. "Yeah, I guess so." I had managed to scrounge up an old half-drunk bottle of water from the back seat. I chugged it. "All right, let's go get what we came for." Jack stepped out of the car, and I followed right behind him. I had an initial wave of trepidation over going to somebody's door at what had to be 3 in the morning, but the way we got here made me feel fairly certain nobody would be waiting for us. I looked around when we stepped on the porch. All of the empty soda cans and tools were old. I couldn't tell the time period exactly, but all of it seemed older than I was. 80s, maybe even around the 70s. It felt like this house was suddenly abandoned one day decades ago and never touched again. Before I had the chance to say anything, Jack was already trying to open the door. He jiggled the knob, and it was locked, of course. The door looked solid and sturdy. It appeared to be a solid slab of wood painted red that was completely flat, save for the knob and deadbolt. I tried to look through the windows on the porch, but there were thick curtains drawn over it. I couldn't see a thing inside. Jack started looking around the piles of tools sitting on top of and under a big homemade table that appeared to have been made with old deck boards and cinder blocks. I just now noticed how musty the place smelled. My heart skipped a beat when I felt like I recognized the smell. I couldn't hold that thought for long, as it was followed by a loud crash that startled me even further. I jumped back. Jack had grabbed a shovel and began wailing on the door. "Jack! Jack! What the heck, dude?" "This is what we got to do, right? To get in there? To get what we want? We came here to do this, Sam," Jack explained between swings, through gritted teeth. "Well, yeah, but you could have warned me." Jack said nothing. He swung the shovel about a dozen more times before he dropped it and dropped to the floor, panting. That's when I noticed he had tears running down his face. "Dude, what's up?" "I can get Cindy back, Sam." He looked up at me, quickly, wiping his tears away. "I can get Cindy back." Cindy was Jack's older sister. The three of us played together all the time when we lived on the same street. It was a few years before, on one of the many beautiful early spring days in 2000. I was 6, Jack was 7, and Cindy was 9. It was afternoon. The sun was just starting to set. It would be time to go home soon. We were out in some woods close to my house exploring, as we always did. The subject came up about building a tree house. We all had the best ideas, how there'd be a place to play Nintendo, and a full kitchen and bathroom, so we'd have our own place to live without any chores or rules. You know, just fun kid stuff. Cindy had climbed a big tree that she claimed was perfect for a treehouse. Jack went up after her, and I began to follow suit. At some point, the two began bickering over something. Nothing at all important. Probably a disagreement over where the beds would go or what snacks would be stocked. Some meaningless argument that I would have completely forgotten had the following not happened. Standing on the branch, Jack pushed Cindy. She fell, screaming the entire way. I never saw her body, but I heard every sound as I clung to the tree in shock. Jack saw the entire event. She sliced her throat on a branch or something on the way down, and she moaned in agony as she drowned in her own blood. Her guttural attempts at screaming slowly died down into a breathy chuffing noise until there was no sound at all. I got down from the tree and ran home, scared but not quite able to process what just happened. I told them Cindy got hurt. My mum and Jack and Cindy's parents and probably some others ran out to the woods. Apparently, Jack was still standing on the branch, frozen in shock. Firefighters had to come and get him down. He was catatonic for days after. Jack's mom never forgave him. She left the family and moved to Texas or somewhere else. His dad tried to help in some way, but the pain from losing Cindy was too deep. His dad became strict, almost like he was punishing Jack for what happened. Jack was given the old Camry and made to get his driver's license quickly so he could get a job and move out. One mistake changed their lives forever. I think Jack believed that doing this ritual could somehow bring his sister back. Maybe he thought he could undo the argument that happened 9 years ago and ruined his family. I said, I don't think that would... but stopped myself. What was I going to say? That there's no way to bring back the dead or go back in time? We were standing on the porch of a house that seemed out of time and place. Who was I to say what could or couldn't be done? Instead, I said, "We're going to need to get something stronger to break in, dude." Jack looked up at me and smiled. I pulled him to his feet, and he hugged me. "Thanks, Sam. This is going to work. This will work." I felt awkward and didn't know how to respond, so I just said, "Okay," broke the hug, and started looking around the porch. We tried to break the door with a hammer and a crowbar, but nothing worked. Jack threw the hammer at one of the windows in frustration, but it bounced off like it hit rubber. We searched around the property, and I found an old rusty axe at the base of a tree. When I turned to shout to Jack that I found something useful, I noticed the house flickering. It was like it was there one moment and gone the next. I ran towards the house and touched it, and the flickering stopped. Jack was yelling, "I couldn't find anything in the back. We should have prepared." He saw the shock on my face. "What happened, Sam?" "The house almost vanished. We shouldn't leave it until we are done." "What?" "That's..." "Okay." Jack started to argue, but then stopped himself. We took turns hitting the door with the axe. We cheered as splinters came off the door. I knocked off the doorknob with the backside of the axe. Eventually, we did enough damage to the area around the locks. Jack dropped the axe. "All right, stand back." Jack kicked the door 3 times, paused, and tried again. After the 4th kick, there was a loud splintering noise, and the door flew open. We both stood there, speechless. It wasn't a pure black void like the story said. It was full of stars, a deep black sprinkled with bright lights. Purple clouds moved slowly across the endless expanse, and a deep hum resonated, making my teeth feel weird. The hum started to sound like speech. It wasn't out loud, but in my head. Come in and see everything you've ever wanted to see, every question answered." It felt enticing. I felt my feet start to step forward, but I stopped. "Jack, don't forget, we can't go in no matter what. Is there a God? How did this all come to be? You want to know? Step into the seam and become knowledge." I tried to ignore it. I had to shout my desire into the void, but I didn't have anything planned. I couldn't believe I came all this way without thinking of something. So I said the first thing that came to mind. It was a stupid, selfish request. I took a deep breath and shouted, "I want to live forever." The purple clouds inside the void lit up and stirred around slightly. "You can live longer than forever if you come in," the voice said in my head. I rubbed my face, my nose was bleeding. Tears were streaming down Jack's face, and he hadn't said a word. I snapped him out of his trance. "Jack, say your piece and let's go." I want Cindy back. I want Cindy to be alive again. I want what happened to her on March 12th, 2000 to have never happened." The purple clouds shifted, and the voice in my head begged me to come closer. Jack's mouth dropped open and his nose started bleeding too. The voice was becoming unbearable. "Let's go. Jack, come on." "Number, I need to go in to save her. I need to walk her out of this place." Jack began approaching the door. "Jack!" I grabbed his shirt and pulled him back. The voice got louder and more frantic. "Jack has made the right choice. He's coming in to enjoy the pleasures of eternity. Join him. Join him." Jack fought me off and pushed me to the ground. "I'm going in there, Sam. If you try to stop me, I'll beat you up." I stood up, wanting to say something like, "Then start fighting Jack," and pull him away from the house. But all I could manage was a weak "Berg." My head was spinning and my body ached. My nose was bleeding heavily. All I could do was watch Jack as he gave me one last sad look. He then turned around and walked through the doorway. It was insane to watch. As Jack walked through, he disappeared. He didn't enter the space beyond the door, but vanished. His head and arms disappeared. Then his body slowly vanished until all that was left was a foot that pulled itself through the door frame. I had no time to react. The voice begged me to follow Jack, to see the beauty he was experiencing. I turned and ran off the porch. The voice didn't get quieter. It promised I could be a god in my universe, that I could change anything I wanted if I went inside. I ran in the opposite direction, feeling terrible. I ran until the voice abruptly stopped. My vision was blurry, my head pounded. I turned around. The house was gone. I walked down the back road for a few minutes. I grabbed some napkins from the Camry and cleaned myself up as best as I could. I couldn't drive out of there because Jack took the key with him. I managed to catch a good Samaritan driving with his girlfriend. They were kind enough to drive me to a gas station within walking distance of my house. I was shocked to find out we were only 15 minutes away. It felt like we had been driving for hours. They asked me what I was doing out, and I lied, saying I had been driving to clear my head and my car broke down. The couple dropped me off. They gave me their names, but I can't remember them. I walked the 10 minutes back to my house. The first thing I did was take an OxyContin that my mom had gotten for wisdom tooth removal. They gave you a bunch of pills back then, so there were leftovers after she healed. I cleaned up the kitchen because we had left it a mess. Mom would have flipped out if she saw it like that, but then I realized she should have been home a long time ago. I looked at the clock on the microwave and felt so sick I almost threw up. It was only 7:45 p.m. I went to bed and tried to sleep, but it didn't happen. I couldn't imagine what the next day would be like, having to explain to Jack's dad what happened. What could I possibly say? I felt so guilty. It was my fault. I saw this stupid story online and wanted to recreate it for no reason. It just so happened to actually work. That was another thing I couldn't stop thinking about. Who shared that story? How many of these things actually did what they claimed? Were all the people sharing their experiences telling the truth? I couldn't stop thinking about it. I finally got out of bed around 9 a.m., deciding it was time to tell a man that the only family he had left was gone. I made some coffee and stepped outside to let the cool air wake me up. I stood outside for a few minutes, my headache now a dull ache, when I heard someone call my name. "Hey, Sam. Oh, you look terrible." I turned around, spilling what was left of my coffee on the ground. It was Cindy. She was wearing a blue shirt and khakis, about to get into a car for her shift at Walmart. "Cindy?" I could hardly breathe. "Are you okay? You're kind of freaking me out. Do I need to get somebody?" "Your dad." "Cindy, I need to talk to your dad about Jack." "Okay, he's in the house. Come on over." Cindy closed the car door and walked up to her house. Their house. They still lived on my street. "But you moved to Easley." "I don't understand," I said weakly. Cindy's face showed concern. "Did you hit your head or something?" She opened the door to the house and yelled, "Hey, Dad! It's Sam! He wants to talk to you about Jack." She quickly whispered something to him before coming back out. "Okay, he's coming out. I've got to get to work. Hope you feel better, Sam." With that, Cindy ran off, got into the same Camry I had spent last night screaming at her brother in, and drove off. I was rubbing the coffee mug in my hand so hard I thought I might break it. Jack's dad came to the door, holding a cup of coffee in one hand and a telephone in the other. "Jesus, Sam, are you okay?" He looked at me with concern. I hadn't showered or changed my clothes from the night before. My shirt had more blood on it than I had thought, and I looked deranged. "Cindy said you may have fallen or something. Do I need to call an ambulance?" "Richard, it's about Jack." I started to cry. "What?" I took a deep breath and let out a massive sob. Jack's gone, Richard, and it's all my fault." I began to sob uncontrollably. "I'm so sorry. My God, it's all my fault. Sam. Richard steadied my shoulder with the hand holding the phone. I took another breath and calmed down enough to look up at him. Richard then said, "Who the heck is Jack?" I collapsed to the ground. The last thing I saw before I blacked out was Jack's mom walking out and telling Richard to dial 911. I was in the hospital for 3 days. They thought I had a seizure or a psychotic break because I kept talking about my best friend named Jack, someone who never existed apparently. Eventually, I pretended he didn't exist either, acting like I didn't know what they were talking about. After some scans showed I was normal, they sent me home. Mom was worried for a bit, but once I seemed okay, things just... moved on. Jack was gone. Any evidence that he ever lived only existed in my memory. I watched old VHS tapes from my childhood where I knew Jack was, but he wasn't there. Life went on as if he had never existed. It was surreal piecing together my life, filling in the gaps of times my best friend was supposed to be there. I cried in private, mourning someone who had never existed, for years. Then Jack started speaking to me. At first I could ignore it, thinking it was just my nerves or exhaustion, but over several weeks it got louder and more persistent. It was Jack's voice telling me I needed to enter the scene with him, saying it was the greatest decision of his life. It was worth it, Sam, so worth it. You need to come in while the veil is weak and you have time. I hadn't mentioned yet that there was a closing procedure needed to cut the connection made to the other side. I had forgotten about it in the trauma of the weeks after I got back. I don't know why it took 15 years to feel the effects of not finishing the ritual. The original Creepypasta mentioned how star and planet alignments affected the success rate of getting your wish granted, so maybe it was something like that. I hope that writing this story will help someone remember it. Maybe someone has an old folder on a hard drive with ancient creepypastas saved from the web, and the drive to find Creepypasta is among them. I desperately need the guide to finish this. Every day gets worse. I see Jack out of the corner of my eye sometimes. He looks exactly the same as the day he vanished in 2009. He just stands there staring at me with a serious look. When I look at him, he vanishes. On that note, I look the same too. I'm 30 now and haven't aged a day past 15. Will I truly live forever? I don't know. I don't know if I can survive another month with how things are progressing. Recently, my dreams have been about Jack. He's naked, surrounded by dazzling purple flames, and his eyes are burning flames too. He speaks in a loud, crackling voice like thunder talking. You seek, I lurk, seek the door, seek the seam. I see glimpses of countless buildings that seem to span forever, but in an instant. A Waffle House with smashed windows, black smoke pouring out. A storage shed in someone's backyard, old blood covering the door. The sweet, sick stench of a nursing home. Room 2103's door, shut tight. On and on and on. I wake up covered in sweat, feeling like I know where I need to go, but not knowing. Most concerning is a door in my house that has become impossible to open. It leads to a small utility closet with my water heater and a shelf. I feel an urge to break through it. The temptation grows every day. I found myself walking into a neighbor's backyard and grabbing a sledgehammer from their garage. I dropped it and ran back to my house, hoping no one saw me. If I break the door open and face the endless void again, could I ask it to end? To finish the ritual? It may not listen. It may pull me inside like it did with Jack. I'm spending all my free time searching for the original Creepypasta to end this before it comes to that. I woke up last night in a daze, standing in front of the utility room door with the neighbor's sledgehammer. I'm afraid I won't be able to resist the temptation to break the door open. Story 2. When I tell people what a day at work is like for a pharmaceutical researcher like me, they often look somewhere between mildly uncomfortable to totally grossed out. It's not glamorous, but sorting through rat droppings to figure out how well a new laxative works is how I pay my bills. So, yeah, I'm a big hit at parties. Don't get me wrong, I believe in the hard work that forms the foundation of good science. But to say it hasn't dampened my passion for science a little bit would be a lie. So when a recruiter offered me a job in a new lab testing a new drug, but wouldn't tell me about it until I signed a dozen NDAs, I jumped at the chance. Looking back now, I can see the red flags. The recruiter must have seen me hesitating and had the perfect solution. A sign-on bonus check with an eye-popping number of zeros. I'm human first, a scientist second, and a guy's got to eat. Speaking of priorities, I can't even imagine the consequences I'll face for breaking those NDAs, but I have to tell as many people as I can about what I saw. First, let me give you some background before I talk about the drug they had me working on. I'm not sure if they wanted to keep it quiet, but the dozens of people in black suits coming in and out of the lab made it clear that the place had deep ties to the government. Which government? I'd guess all of them because of the number of different languages I heard in hushed whispers around every corner. So what could bring all these governments together and inspire a level of cooperation like what it took to build the International Space Station? Well, we as a species are in big trouble. Despite being a scientist, I still don't have any better words to describe the situation we're all in. Rising temperatures, rising sea levels, rising pollution, rising risk of nuclear conflict. We're in a bad spot. As much as some politicians will say things are just fine and scientists just want to scare you, the people behind the scenes, the ones with real power, know that action must be taken. I'm not sure how many years of failed attempts at policy change and bribes it took for them to realize they needed to be more direct, but they were fully committed to their current plan when I joined the team. When I said they brought me in to work on a drug, that wasn't quite true. It's a virus built from scratch with one goal: to speed up human evolution. If we can't stop the world from turning into a mess, we might as well learn how to adapt, right? Humans need to evolve if we want to survive the world we're creating for ourselves, and natural evolution is too slow. I won't bore you with all the details of how this research was carried out, so I'll give you the short version. To get useful data on how this virus works, we had to make sure our subjects came from every part of our troubled world. Whether it was pollution or water scarcity or any other hardship, we needed to know how the virus would help a subject survive in difficult environments. I know what you're thinking. Who in their right mind would agree to be infected with an experimental virus that might forever change them at the genetic level? Well, the answer is simple. People who don't know. I'll take all your condemnation now. We don't have time to find people who are desperate enough for money to let us change their bodies in the name of science. Our situation is that dire. So researchers like me are paired with unsuspecting people from all over the world to monitor what changes the virus decides to make. The subject I was paired with was identified by a long string of characters to keep us from getting too familiar, but for the sake of this story, we'll call her Lucy. Lucy was pretty average. She didn't come from a part of the world dealing with the worst effects of our planet's abuse. No, she came from Middle America. Every good study needs a control group or something close to it. Since we needed to see what the virus would do to hosts living in the real world, we couldn't keep our subjects locked up in white cells under constant observation. No, they went right back to their lives after getting injected with what they thought was the next generation of a flu vaccine or hair loss prevention or whatever lie we told them that day. So the plan was this. I flew out to check on Lucy and do extensive testing every 3 months, and she had a number to call at any time to report any symptoms directly to me. And for months, there was nothing. All our checkups were as dull as a yearly physical. No sudden resistance to UV radiation, no enhanced immune system, not even something as simple as slightly stronger bones. The phone never rang with her saying she could suddenly fly either. After about a year of no noticeable changes in Lucy, I accepted that this new job was just as boring as my previous one, and I might as well enjoy the absurd amount of money they were paying me. That all changed when the phone rang on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Hello? Is this Agnostos Pharmaceuticals? Asked Lucy, referring to one of the many fake companies we used for our work. Hi, yes, this is Alan, I replied with my fake name. Lucy, right? How are you doing? I'm doing fine, I guess, but I'm supposed to call this number if I experience anything strange, right? I could hear a slight tremble in her voice. That's right. I picked up a pen and notepad, ready to finally do some science. What have you been experiencing? Well, it's such a small thing that I wasn't sure if I was really feeling it, but there's this fuzziness. behind my eyes and inside my ears. I stopped writing when she said that. Fuzziness? Not the X-ray vision or super hearing I was hoping she would say. A lot of the other researchers were reporting things like advanced regeneration of lung cells in some subjects living in areas with bad air quality or slightly reduced need for water in areas facing drought. This certainly wasn't as impressive as those results, but still worth checking out. Well, Lucy, I can't test for anything over the phone, so how about we move up our scheduled checkup and I'll fly over there in a week, I said as I was already drafting an email to logistics for travel arrangements. Yeah, sure, that sounds good. Great, we'll be in touch with a time and place soon. Bye now. A week later, I arrived in Lucy's hometown. It was a rundown place with old brick buildings that seemed to have been forgotten for at least 20 years. The quiet driver in a black suit pulled up to a building that might have been a dentist's office long ago, but now it was just one of many empty shells rented by the organization for checkups like this. The suit and I walked into the building, and I carried a duffel bag full of high-tech portable testing equipment. This equipment could tell me anything about someone's body in just a few minutes. One device, which looked like a metal detector, could give a full-body MRI with better resolution than anything else on the market. This equipment was highly classified and wouldn't be available to the public for decades. Despite all the fancy equipment, I couldn't find anything wrong with Lucy's body. But that didn't mean she was okay. She looked like she hadn't slept since our phone call. She seemed to have aged 10 years since our last meeting 2 months ago. Lucy, when's the last time you ate? I asked her in my best doctor's voice. She didn't seem to hear me and kept rocking back and forth while sitting on the exam table. The tips of her fingers were raw from chewing her nails, which she did non-stop during the exams. Lucy, can you hear suddenly? Lucy's gaze locked onto me with intense focus. Yes, I hear you, she stammered. I swallowed hard. Something about her intense focus made me uneasy, like she could see through me better than any medical imaging. Are you still feeling that fuzziness, Lucy? She nodded quickly, twisting a lock of greasy, thinning hair around her fingers and pulling it until I could see her scalp starting to move. It's more now. I've been hearing and seeing more, she said, cocking her head to the side as if she felt a spider crawling on her neck. I involuntarily glanced at the door behind me, thinking about an escape route, but I quickly reminded myself that Lucy was unwell, not dangerous. Besides, the armed suit was just outside the exam room. What kind of things have you been hearing and seeing? I don't know. I think they know I see them and stay just out of view. Just to the side. Lucy's eyes darted around the room. I wrote down what she was saying, but kept my eyes on her. I only heard them at first. They get so close. But all I'd see, only for a moment, was a ha-ha hand with so many fingers reaching under the door or long hair sliding along the floor and around a corner. Lucy was crying now, her hands on her head as she dug her nails into her scalp. I set my pen and notebook down on a nearby counter. Lucy, is there any history of mental illness in your family? She slammed her hands onto the exam table with frightening speed. I'm not crazy. Everyone has said I'm imagining it, but I see them. They've always been there. She got off the exam table and walked unsteadily toward me, screaming, They've always been there. I tried to find the words to calm her down, but before I could say anything, the door behind me swung open. The suit stepped in, having heard the commotion. He already had his hand on his gun. The room fell silent. The sudden quietness drew my attention back to Lucy. She stared mouth open at the suit who had walked in. No, she stared just above and to the right of him. Then a new sound filled the room. It was like a hoarse, wordless whisper, which I realized was Lucy taking a long, excruciating breath. Then she screamed. My ears hurt from the loud scream, and I covered them with my hands. The suit stepped forward and stood beside me, gun drawn but pointed at the ground. No, 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 Lucy screamed. It's right there. She pointed a bloody, trembling finger to the empty air behind the suit. What happened next was so fast that I'm not sure I remember it correctly. I turned to look at where Lucy was pointing, and at the same time, the suit began to speak. "Mom, back against the wall now, step back." His words stopped suddenly, like a car hitting a tree. I turned to look at the suit and saw a man whose mind had left his body. His eyes were empty, his grip went slack, and the gun fell to the floor. I took a step forward and turned to face the man. It's a cliché, but there was no light in his eyes, only emptiness. As I looked into his eyes, I noticed a change. His right pupil shrank until it was almost invisible, while his left pupil grew until his blue iris was gone. Then he fell to the ground. Not like someone fainting, but like a puppet with its strings cut. I will always remember the sickening thud of his head hitting the floor. I rushed to check his pulse and felt nothing. My body went numb, but before I could process what had happened, a voice spoke behind me. "I see, I see," Lucy chanted as she walked toward me, holding the pen I had left on the counter. I fell backward in shock and pushed myself away until my back hit the wall. Lucy kept walking toward me, her eyes fixed on me, but also looking at something far away. I saw the suit's gun to my side and quickly grabbed it, pointing it at Lucy. Stay back, I'll shoot you," I shouted, unsure if I could actually do it. Lucy kept walking until she stood over me, still staring directly into my eyes, but also at something else. After a moment that felt like forever, her eyes seemed to recognize me, the trembling, crying man pointing a gun at her face. "You'll see." Before I could scream, Lucy's hand plunged the pen into her left eye with a horrible squelch, and then stabbed out her right eye. She froze for a moment, eyes destroyed, with the bloody pen still in her hand. Why? Her voice was weak and scared like a child's. "Why are they still there?" Her hand moved again, stabbing the pen into her neck. Blood gushed out, splashing onto me and into my open, screaming mouth. Lucy collapsed almost immediately into a puddle of blood. The days since then have been a blur. I vaguely remember the response team bursting into the building, armed to the teeth. I know it wasn't because I'm such a valuable asset. No, they needed to keep all this quiet. They only told me that the suit died from a massive brain aneurysm, an instant, unpredictable death. I was, of course, fired, but not before signing another mountain of NDAs and getting a severance payment that could pay off my mortgage and let me retire early. How generous of them. They told me to forget about all this and enjoy the money. But I'm still a scientist. I've spent countless sleepless nights thinking about what happened to Lucy, about what we did to her. I have a theory, one that I'll never be able to test because I'm sure they've already dissected her body and then burned it. My theory is this: human senses evolved to help us deal with the immediate world around us. Our senses evolved to make sure we wouldn't walk off a cliff or to make sure we heard the saber-toothed tiger sneaking up on us. However, seeing or hearing anything beyond what we needed to stay alive would be wasted evolutionary effort. So, we see a narrow band of the spectrum of light and only hear frequencies within a certain range. Our virus changed that for Lucy. The question of why the virus would cause these changes kept me awake at night for days, until I remembered something simple. It's environmental pressures that guide the course of evolution. This often comes in the form of temperature changes or scarcity of a particular resource, but one of the most effective pressures to induce an evolutionary change is the presence of a predator. A predator lurking just outside the bounds of what nature intended us to see, all to make sure that its prey would never develop the senses needed to know it was there. I think Lucy was given the terrible burden of knowing it was there. Like I said, the powers that be want to keep a tight lid on all of this. I'm expecting them to come after me. They might even make it look like an accident, a gas leak explosive. Or something. That would be like closing the barn door after all the horses have run out, though. See, us scientists like to gossip. I've heard rumors about a small town in a forgotten corner of the Midwest that is currently under quarantine. They say the few hundred residents all started talking about a fuzziness behind their eyes and glimpses of something lurking just around corners. They told me on day one that this virus was designed to not be contagious, that it was physically impossible for it to spread. Well, the thing is, viruses evolve too. I know this firsthand. I feel a fuzziness behind my eyes and in my ears. Story 3. You don't need to know me. All you need to know is that I know something I shouldn't. It's not my story to tell, but I don't think dead girls can complain much. I see through her eyes, feel the same pain. It's more than a memory. I live in those moments every second of every day. I've never been religious, but I pray to anything that will listen. I have to tell her story. I don't know why, but someone needs to hear her side of things. Just promise you won't leave me. We'll stay together, all right? Yeah, whatever, I promise, she said, taking off her work uniform. I was already out of my work clothes, having changed the second my shift ended. Working at the theatre had its perks, but it wasn't worth smelling like popcorn butter. Rachel used perfume to cover the smell, but I showered after every shift. My hair was still damp as proof. Do you need anything before we leave? She asked, pulling clothes out of her bag to change into. Probably, I joked, trying to ease my tension. But it's my house, so if it's important, I'll notice it on the way out. She laughed, buttoning the last of 4 buttons on her jeans. Then she put on a tight Ringer t-shirt. It used to have some image, but it had faded, making it hard to see. I dressed differently, with a plaid yellow skirt and a matching button-up top. I wore a brown belt with a shiny gold buckle and hoop earrings to match. We weren't the type to be friends, really, we shouldn't have been, but work brings different people together. Rachel jumped off the edge of my bed, grabbing her bag off the floor. She headed out the door, forgetting her keys on my nightstand. Rachel, I laughed, picking up the keys and following her out. You won't get far without these. She smiled, took the keys, and kept going without a word. Her car was parked on the sidewalk in front of my house. I'm not good with cars, but I knew it was black. I think it was a Cutlass, but I wouldn't bet on it. She got into the driver's seat, but I hesitated. I didn't want to get in with her. I was scared, but it was too late. She had planned all of this, and I couldn't ruin it for her. So, against my better judgment, I buckled myself into the passenger seat. If only she knew. The drive was odd. Even Main Street had no traffic, making it feel like a deserted graveyard of stoplights and fallen leaves. Fog blocked our view in every direction, growing thicker the further out of town we went. I expected more traffic because of the carnival, but maybe we missed it. I twiddled my thumbs, pretending I had nothing to worry about. You okay? Rachel asked, not taking her eyes off the road. She always noticed my quirks and could tell when I felt off. Mm-hmm, I squeaked, snapping out of my trance. I was obviously not okay. Rachel glanced over, looking calm and relaxed. You sure? You look really tense. I didn't answer. Cool air flooded in through Rachel's window, letting the smoke from her cigarette float out. Flickering neon lights stopped her before she could ask more. The lights lured us into an open field turned parking lot, like an anglerfish lures its prey. The sign reading, "The Fun House," was bright, bold, and colourful, hanging over the entrance. It looked new, like they had just bought it. I fumbled for the door handle, but couldn't muster the strength to open it. My vision was fuzzy, my heart pounding, and I had a headache I couldn't shake off. Rachel came around and opened the door for me. I tumbled out, nearly knocking her over. I think she asked me something, but I don't know. I blanked out, like someone had burned every last page in my mind. I got up and walked towards the entrance. It was overwhelming, the lights, the laughter, the crowded paths, but I put on a calm smile and a happy voice, acting as if everything was fine. I had never snuck out before. I was my parents' ideal child, and I loved it. Being a role model for other kids kept me going, like a push I needed to function. Rachel grabbed my arm, pulling me towards the ring toss. Would you be careful? I begged, as she pulled me past a girl, nearly sending her flying. The girl looked younger, maybe 10 or 11. She dressed oddly, like she was a few years behind in style, wearing a pale, multicolored striped shirt and bright blue pants. Oddly, she had a microvision handheld game. They stopped making those in 1981, if I remember right. But with how often Lance and Hyde mentioned it, how could I forget? That was only 3 years ago, so it wasn't too odd she had one. Looking around, everyone looked a few years behind in style. It was uncanny, but maybe it was just my imagination. Rachel didn't seem to notice, so maybe it was nothing to worry about. Trying to distract myself, we played every game we could. We won nothing, of course. In the carnival, the house always wins. A loud announcement pulled my attention away from the horse race game I'd been playing. The show will start in 10 minutes. 10 minutes, the announcer droned. Stock up on snacks, carnival trinkets, and secure a prime seat. And of course, don't forget to enjoy the show. His tone implied that enjoying the show was optional, but buying snacks and trinkets was not. Rachel grabbed my wrist again, pulling me towards the tent. "Come on, we have to get in before the show starts." My heart raced, and my breath came in short gasps as I stumbled after her. We passed all the games we had played, which oddly looked older than they had moments ago. Looking more closely, the grounds were almost empty. Where there had been many people earlier, now only the soulless carnival employees wandered around. The tent looked too small from the outside, and I thought Rachel and I would be stuck on the sidelines without chairs because we were late. I closed my eyes as I walked in, but it didn't help. The smells of sweat, grease, and other things didn't help my nerves. The air inside the tent was too thick to breathe. Without hesitation, Rachel threw herself towards the stairs, dragging me up behind her. Our feet pounded a rhythm against the weathered boards. I held my breath, begging myself not to feel sick. I failed, and watery vomit splattered against the wooden steps. "Whoa!" She let go of my hand, covering her own mouth as if she might be sick too. "Are you sure you're all right?" I choked on my words. I wasn't all right. "Yeah," I managed, before continuing up the stairs. It was too late to back out now. We stumbled over feet trying to find open seats, but eventually we found what seemed to be the last two in the tent. As if time itself were waiting for us, the show started. The music swelled, and the crowd erupted into cheers as the lights dimmed like embers in a dying fire pit. A single ray of light guided the eyes of the crowd towards the center of the ring. Then you saw him, one of the many clowns. He could have passed for ordinary, but he had long lost that privilege. He wore a nice white button-up shirt, offset by bright red pants and a bow tie to match. His proportions were all wrong, like a child's drawing of a person. He had prosthetics. They were wooden, all different shades and types. It was like he was made purely by the creator's twisted joy for torture. The effect, like a train wreck you couldn't look away from. "Hello, boys and girls, welcome to the fun house," he cheered, waving his arms through the air like a weird vintage cartoon character. His tone was strange, like a voice box, barely matching his mouth as he spoke. It didn't fit him. It was pitchy, too high, as if he'd sucked all the helium from a balloon. "Here is where your dreams come true. Just wait. You'll see wonders of the world, mysteries never to be answered, and the most incredible tricks performed by our amazing actors. Now give a round of applause for the dancers." He stepped back, and the stage darkened, as if he were the light keeping it lit. As if they had been there the whole time, the dancers began their performance. They looked like shining dots in the dark, all emitting their own light. Their movements pulled the audience into awe. Dark blue leotards clung tightly to their bodies, with black ruffles dancing beneath their skirts. Defying gravity, every leap lasted just a moment too long. Their ruffled skirts gave the effect of a black swan leaping from water. They held beautiful dark red ribbons, the shade of long oxidized blood. They spun through hoops so quickly they sparked. In contrast to the carnival world, they were angels. After they finished their dance, they seemed to vanish. The ring, now lit up, showed 4 large trapeze ropes and 2 poles on opposite sides, waiting for the next performers. The additional lighting showed how large the tent really was. It hadn't appeared this big from the outside, only a few hundred feet. Looking at it now, it had to be at least 1,000 feet around, maybe more. A young woman and man climbed up on opposite platforms, their eyes locked. They wore similar attire to the dancers, but without skirts or ribbons. They looked alike, both slim with brunette hair, possibly siblings. They stood still for a moment, as if waiting for an introduction. Without one, she stepped back to get a running start and dove. Her hands slammed against the bar, gripping tight as she swung towards her male counterpart. Time seemed to slow. She looked so focused, so certain. She trusted her every move, and her partner just as much. As she neared him, the lights cut, drenching the world in dim red darkness. Silence. It's frightening. The world isn't meant to be quiet. Silence is a predator stalking prey. It's the calm before the storm. Silence is pain in the making. A scream, the kind that causes nightmares and makes ears ring. One that speaks a million words, hopes and dreams, then crushes them all in a second. A scream of pain, loss, and knowing. Knowing that you cannot win the game of life. That no matter what, life remains the constant victor. Without words, you knew. What she begged. Screaming is the one language everyone speaks. The lights snapped back on, but the scream didn't stop. The tent shuddered with the silence of the audience, only the screaming. Looking around, they were gone. Even the male trapeze artist had vanished just like everyone else, disappeared, leaving dirt across the floor and the fear that she might not be alone. Looking ahead, I saw her, crushed by the pressure of her fall, the last moments of terror still frozen in her eyes, limbs twisted in each direction like a gory broken compass guiding me nowhere. The dirt beneath her was damp red. Her corpse was still screaming. The first normal scream was mine. Frozen in place, everything seemed to unfold before me like a movie, and for a moment I prayed I was part of the narrative. My knees gave way, sending me to the floor, barely leaving me conscious through the fear-induced nausea. It was too sudden, too real. The woman's screaming continued, beyond what her crushed torso should have allowed. Then, as if fate had pity on me for a moment, blood gurgled up her throat, slowly muffling her agony. Leaning my shaking body against a chair, I looked towards where the door was. Fate did not pity me. It distracted me. Distracted, so it could do something much worse. The door had vanished with no trace left behind, as if it had never been there at all. I looked around and saw what I should have known far before. There was no way out. Running down the stairs, I slipped and was reminded of my fear-induced vomit, now covering my yellow skirt. Nearing the bottom of the steps, I stopped. A sound echoed through the air, stopping me in my tracks, skittering on the roof. Then I saw it. It tore through the roof of the tent with ease, but no light came in. It was a dark shade of grey-brown, 50, maybe 60 feet long, wrapping itself around the poles holding the place up. 10 long spider-like limbs stuck randomly to the body, as if added as an afterthought, all shifting as if they had minds of their own. 2 sockets where the eyes should have been, pulling the skin around them in like a black hole. Its smile was grotesque and mangled. The ends wrapped around the edges of its head, showing horribly large, sharpened human teeth. Moving faster than my eyes could catch up with, it darted toward me. I dropped back to the floor. Sliding down the stairs, I scratched any available surface of skin. It slammed into the steps above me and crawled down right past me. It couldn't see. I crawled along the seat bottoms, shaking every second I wasn't pressed to the floor. It may not have been able to see me, but it could hear my every breath. After more than an hour of crawling, hiding, holding my breath, and repeating that vicious cycle, I reached a curtain. Barely open enough for me to fit through silently, I crawled in. Too frightened to breathe, for fear it might hear me, I ran further inside. Hardly seeing where I was going, I ran in and out of every curtain and opening, praying for an escape. Each direction I tried left me more and more hopeless. After many failed attempts at tearing through the tent and looking behind every crate and rack I could find, I crumbled to the floor. Tears streamed down my cheeks. I hadn't taken the time to realize what was destined to happen. I was not going to escape. I was stuck here to rot away or die to that horrible monster outside this curtain. I had so much left to do, I wasn't ready to die. The thoughts hurt, and I pressed my nails into my palm. I heard it scurry across the ground outside. It hadn't forgotten I was there. I pressed my nails deeper into my skin, drawing blood. It wasn't good, but it took the pain in my head away, helping me focus on something other than fear I couldn't control. Through my blurred vision, I saw a slightly open crate I was too panicked to notice before. Wiping my eyes, I walked over. Sliding the lid off, I looked inside. Human-sized doll parts, some wooden, others porcelain, like those on the clown from the start of the show. I picked one up to look at, just to see what they were. It was hollow. I slid the arm over my own, putting each finger into the correct slot. A perfect fit. The porcelain was cold on my skin, but the freckles dotted on it seemed to match my own. Each finger was built to bend, carefully crafted as if put together by hand. Moving my arm was comfortable, as if it was made for me. Putting it back, I stepped quietly back towards my spot on the floor. Then I felt it. Something moved from out in the ring. I stepped towards the curtain, making sure to stay out of sight of the thing I knew was out there. I glanced out into the dark, not wanting to see it looking back at me. A dim ray from the torn roof was the only light. In that light were scattered chairs, one of the trapeze poles, now broken, and the door. It was the same as before, as if it had never left. Without thinking, I ran. My shoes pounded the dirt, echoes following me like bees to flowers. I was so close to safety, freedom to the life I feared I'd lose tonight. Hope struck my heart. What strikes harder than hope? Something sharp. Just seconds away from the door, my stomach dropped. I was jerked back, my limbs crunched together by the grip of that thing. Mustering my last bit of strength, I got one look at it. Him. He looked more human than before, almost as if he was turning more human as he watched me suffer. Then, my soon-to-be lifeless body was gouged into a broken trapeze pole. Slow, steady, dripping. Blood. My breathing labored through my punctured lungs. It hurt, not like you'd imagine, like swallowing chlorine at the pool, the choking, nausea, all the same. But it wasn't quick. It lingered, like vinegar on my tongue. "Goodbye, Marylin," a voice said, walking towards me. It was Rachel, my co-worker, classmate, someone I considered my friend. Rachel stared at my dying body, and I realized she had no choice. She was a puppet doing as she was told. I saw it, the way she bowed her head. She didn't really want this. But I couldn't form the words to convince her otherwise. Marylin's breathing slowed. Maybe she had been hallucinating, maybe not. But in her last moments, I swear I saw her killer become a man. Then her breath grew slower and slower. The worst part about all of this, I don't get a death ending. No easy way out. "Good," the man said as he lifted her corpse off the pole. Her limbs drooped as blood coated her skin. "You will remain here until we find him. Do I make myself clear, Rachel?" Her head nodded in compliance, her voice hardly above a whisper. "Of course, Father." My work is done. He had plans for her body, stitching her wounds, removing limbs to make place for those same antique toy parts she had seen before, predicting her own demise. Her eyes sewn open, dark blue buttons in their place. Marylin, a name of the past, a life left behind. A new name, but the same old girl. Madame Louise, the marionette doll. I don't know who she is, and I don't know why I know her story. But whoever she may be, God have mercy on Marylin.